Hi. I never trust that I have everything ready when we start.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
It's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff, but like
One little
you know,
thing,
whatever.
nothing works.
Yeah, I know. Do you got something or I got a quick something?
You got a quick something. Go.
Okay, quick something. This is work related.
Okay.
So I just started the in-season program and the meal plan program.
Yeah, I know.
So for any humans that are interested in doing that, for all you guys listening, I made it for you guys. That's what it's for. I would say between ages of 14 to 23-ish. So from
Sorry. Yeah.
so from like Bantam major, if you're in Canada or whatever, up until you're in college or something like that. Most kids in that age haven't really done a meal plan thing before. So I don't suggest it for kids younger than 14 just because you probably don't really care that much. So it probably isn't worth it. But if you're an exceptional person when you're young, then feel free. And the in-season program, the training program, I also don't really recommend if you're under 14 just because I assume a certain level of experience. And if you've never been in it's not a beginner's program.
Yeah.
Let's say that. But for the people that did the off-season program, it's the same kind of thing. The workouts are very different, but it's the same thing with the videos and all that. So spent a lot of time doing that. And then the meal plan thing, spending some time on that. And it's funny to see what kids eat because people that have signed up, I got one of our guys, I was doing his meal plan yesterday.
Yeah.
And it's not the kid's fault. They don't know what they're supposed to eat necessarily, but it's strange to me that they're never taught about any of this like basic stuff. Because for it's nothing crazy. Like for the meal plans, I build them around what you already eat. So I send out like a questionnaire. You have to fill the questionnaire out, and I kind of build it based on your answers. Because I want it to be something you want to follow. I don't want it to be something that makes you hate your life.
But you don't want to have a list of can't eat this, can't eat this,
right?
can't eat this,
Exactly.
and everything looks green and leafy.
So just interrupting my own story, I had a kid yesterday saying he really likes eating waffles with Nutella in the morning. And I'm like, okay. He said to me, kind of joking, kind of serious, like, yeah, just you take that out. Like, take that out of I don't need to eat that. And you're probably right. You probably don't need to eat that. But if you really like eating that, then that's fine to a certain degree, especially at their age when they're all grown and whatever. But it can't be only that, right? It can't be just waffles and Nutella. Like have a gram of protein or something, man. You know? So the way I explained it to the kids, we had a nice seminar in here last week when we were talking about it. And I was saying you build around things you like to eat and it makes it easier for you to want to eat it.
For sure.
So anyways, I'm looking at some of the things that these kids are writing down in their questionnaire. And it's just amazing to me the lack of any kind of idea of what they should be eating. And they say it but it's from the parents, right? How parents have no idea what anyone should be eating either, or how it's not taught in school or just basic.
Or it's taught, but it's looked over, right?
Yeah, right?
Like it could be a very interesting subject.
Yeah. Like I remember in school, I don't know about you, but we had like 2 weeks of like health or whatever.
We had the basic food pyramid.
Yeah.
That's what I think it's still kicking around.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's backwards.
Yeah. Yeah. Seriously.
Right?
That's all.
Get your bread and pasta and dairy products first. It's like nah.
Yeah.
but you know it's not like when you talk about the eating, it's really, I know that because you were dialed in at a younger age to being aware of things and you educated yourself when you were young, but like in general, most people don't have that basic information. Like food is food and it's got to taste good and just really not understanding. Like I can't tell you how many people my age in the 50s and 40s, they want to start cleaning up their diet as human beings, not athletes. And it'll be like, oh, all I had today was a toasted tomato sandwich. It's like, that's no good. But they really think it's good because they're eating less and they didn't have anything really fattening. Like, what's a whole grain bread, let's say? That sounds good. And a tomato, well, where's your protein? Like, protein's your first source. You have to have your protein. And so people will be like, yeah, it's just, I'm trying. It's just, I'm not, it's not working for me. It's like, yeah, you're not eating enough, but more importantly, you're not eating quality food. So parents, like it, of course it baffles our mind as people that are dialed into healthy choices and performance foods, right? But your general people, it's not like parents are dumb. It's like it's ignorance, not in a bad, like ignorance meaning lack of information. They just never put their time and energy into understanding why food is important. And like if you really think about it, like your cells in your body, the only thing they're there for is to absorb nutrients so that they can live and not die off. Well, that's important. That's what keeps you healthy. If you want healthy cells, you have a healthy life, right? So, but people don't think about food. It's like you just eat what's cheaper, and I get that, and what you know. So, and it's just so funny, right? Like when adults, let's say, eat, it's pleasure, or they already know I don't like that, or if you look at eating healthy, it's like it's almost like a negative. Eating healthy, it can't taste good, can't be good for you, it doesn't fill you up, and but if you just change your simple things, right? It's protein, it's quality carbs, quality fats, and but you have to get your protein in. I think that's number one where a lot of people miss. Um, that's where they miss the mark, is on quality protein. You know.
Yeah, well, I was just gonna say it doesn't, because with with these kids, that's the one thing I want to make sure people understand is that we don't take it to that level where we're like getting into the science and like all this stuff about it. It's very basic, like fundamental. Make sure that you have everything present at every meal and you're eating balanced and you're eating good quality food. That's it, and it's including things that they already like to eat.
Yeah.
Right, because I mean, it's amazing the lack of. I was talking to somebody on the weekend and they were asking me how a pre-workout is different than steroids. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just like anything about nutrition, people aren't taught the value of feeling good versus the mouth pleasure thing that we always talk about. And if we can start to instill that, especially when you're an athlete, because it's so important, right? It's so important. And that's kind of why I started this program, is because these kids have no idea, and they were constantly coming up and asking me questions, and they want to do better and they want to learn about it and they want to improve how they're eating and whatever,
Yeah.
but they just don't know,
Yeah.
or don't have the knowledge to do it, right?
Yeah.
So anyways, that's why I started that one, and I think that's important. So if any of you guys are interested in that, or the in-season training program, it's 2 workouts a week, just strength maintenance, injury prevention stuff. The links are in our bio on our social channels, or you can get on our website. They're there if you are interested in doing that. And that is my plug to start.
Yeah, well, your just to go one more thing on your nutrition plan, it's actually, I want to reiterate what you said about it a little bit from another angle. Is I think it's a really good idea for kids just to be aware. Like when you're like at the 14-year-old age, that's kind of good because you are old enough to make decisions, and you don't have to be perfect. That's the number one thing. You don't have to be perfect, but just to start thinking, oh, you're making huge gains if you just sit there and when you go to eat and say, okay, where's my protein? So if they just understand, oh, I need protein at this meal. So maybe you have your Nutella waffles, but you also have 2 eggs.
That's exactly what I said,
Now,
right?
yeah. So now you've got something that goes, and then maybe instead of the Nutella, you put berries on it. And it's like another alternative. That's now you made a better choice. So doing that over time, you have a little bit easier time cleaning up because you're more aware of what you're eating.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the default too, just to keep talking about it, is people will always default, or especially kids or even adults, when they think about, I'm going to follow a meal plan or something, they right away think restrictive, like I have to take away. And what I've done when I make these meal plans is I add, because the thing is, most of these kids don't eat enough.
Don't eat enough. Yeah.
So for me, I'm not looking to take away. I'm looking to add, and I'm also not looking to make them hate their life, or I'm not going to give them my meal plan and what I eat, right? So I want them to like what they're eating. So I let them keep a little bit of the stuff that maybe isn't necessarily optimal, but it's about the adding, like you're talking about, right? Add, if there's no protein at this meal, where's the protein, right? If you're not having a good carb source, where's the carbs, right? Where's the veggies? There's no veggies here. Like whatever it is that you're missing, and that's what I do. So I'll take your, like you said, our beefaroni is another one that I love. One of our guys, beefaroni, dude.
I used to
Loves it.
ask kids when I used to help out on the treadle.
Yeah.
I used to ask every kid
Yeah,
when they
what they
step
eat.
on and go,
Yeah,
oh,
they
what'd
tell
you
me.
eat today? And you'd
Yeah.
hear like, oh, I had hot dogs and craft. Like there were some
Oh, yeah.
hilarious ones.
Yeah, grilled cheese and French fries,
Yeah,
whatever. And
yeah.
it's like,
Would you drink Pepsi?
yeah, Pepsi, Pepsi. It's like you're 7, dude. But and this is the thing. It's just no awareness. They don't think about it, right? And the
Yeah.
problem is, at least for the kids that I'm talking to, they want to, like, they have a goal, right? They want to do better, feel better, and perform better when they're playing their game. And the number one thing is going to be their nutrition and their sleep and their nutrition. Those are the two biggest things that will lead to you feeling better on the ice. So one kid was asking me, he's like, man, like I'm just feeling tired on the ice. And I'm like, oh yeah, like what? How come? What do you think's going on? I'm like, how are you sleeping? Take them through the questionnaire. How you sleeping? How, like, whatever. How are you eating? Do you feel like you're out of shape? Like what? And I know they're not out of shape. Sure enough, he sends me his meal plan, and he might be eating like 2,600 calories in the day, where his maintenance level is probably close to 4,000. So it's like, dude, you're under eating like 1,500 calories a day. Of course you're exhausted. Like, of course you're tired. Like, you don't have enough nutrients to help yourself, you know? So it's like they would do it anyways if they had a little bit of awareness around what they're supposed to eat, you know?
Yeah. Well, it was really funny this summer when Charlie got home from golf, because we eat pretty healthy in general, but he really dialed in his eating, you know, due to you writing his program and dialing it in.
Yeah.
And he was measuring his food and stuff. And like at first, there's two things, right? There's an excitement to do it, right? You know that. Yeah, it's like someone that goes to the gym. And
yeah, you're motivated to start.
okay, I'm going to do this every day, and then you actually might think you might even do more, and you get extreme about it, right?
Yeah.
So he wanted to get his containers to bring so that it was all portioned out and stuff, and meal plan, and that was great the first week. And then the amount of food that he was eating at first, you could just see his face just going, "Oh, I gotta eat more," because he had to put on minimum 5 pounds, but more like 10 pounds to sustain him. And the amount of like rice or the vegetables and the food, my wife would look and go, "My God!"
Yeah, crazy.
But then after a little bit, it was like nothing. You just pound that. So he increased his calories, and you just get used to it, and because your body's like an incinerator at that point, right? When you're burning calories, especially the way he burns calories. So it's a pretty interesting project to watch. And the thing with nutrition is you're probably not going to be perfect. It's really hard. I know for me right now, and we're pretty good. We're still pretty good, but we hit the road a little bit. Like we're gone 3 days, and it's like you just can't be perfect, you know. Or you get bored, and it's like, yeah, let's go have something to eat, and boredom kicks in. And
yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that's why I even in the meal plans that I give to the kids, I spell out, like I give there's probably 2 pages of questions like that, like what happens if I can't stick to it or whatever.
Yeah,
because it's all that kind of stuff. It's not about being perfect, man. And we're trying to learn and try to have some awareness around what we're supposed to eat and all that kind of stuff, right? So whether it's that or the working out, that's what it's about. It's about the progress. It's not about being perfect all the time. You're gonna miss a workout. You're gonna miss a meal. You're gonna eat something you shouldn't eat. Like that stuff's gonna happen. But it's about increasing your knowledge, right? That's not an excuse to not learn anything ever and to not get better at what you're getting better at. Especially because you have a goal, like you want to improve. Like that's what you say. So here's an easy way to do it, right? You have a lot of control over your workout habits and your eating habits, so you might as well try to get better and learn some stuff about it, right? So,
and those workouts are great, by the way.
Yeah, I think they're good. I mean, I would say that because I wrote them.
They're awesome.
Yeah. So, anyways, if you're interested in that, they're you can find them on the website, or in the links are in our bio right there to register for those, which is cool. I'm good to go to the topic now. If you unless you have something else you want to say first.
What's your topic?
Well, I was going to start with this question that I had about the elite prospects, hockey DB stuff, and then I was going to lead you into talking. But do you have anything else you want to talk about, or no?
No, I'm good.
You're good. So I got an email from someone that listened to the podcast, and he asked an interesting question that kind of leads into a little bit kind of what we're talking about later today. So he was asking me about elite prospects, hockey DB, and these kind of tracking sites where you have your points up and the games you played, what teams you played for, and all that. So if you don't know what elite prospects is or hockey DB, they're just basically player profile sites that show your stats and your games played and all that, and then they can show some team stats and whatever. So it's a little bit like an NHL.com for all of the leagues that exist that are somewhat known, from the AAA level all the way up to the NHL or whatever. So this guy he sent me an email, and he asked, my son is constantly poring over elite prospects. A few of his teammates have updated their profile with photos, height, weight, date of birth, etc. I've checked it out, and it's pretty extensive. So he said before he committed to his team this year, his coach was puzzled that he couldn't find his kid on these hockey databases that he uses. And he mentioned Instat. That's another one. He's basically just asking, what do you guys make of these things? So he's not asking about like specific scouting services or websites, but kind of
Okay.
what do you think about or what do you make of these like elite prospects, hockey DB type stuff? Because kids, a lot of times, even I'll see kids in their Instagram profile, they'll have their elite prospects hockey link like to their personal profile. Like I don't know who makes them because I just have one,
I have no
but I
idea.
didn't make it. But there's one for everyone. There's one for every hockey player kid. And even on mine, like there's a picture on mine. It shows my stats for stuff, and it's like I didn't do that. So I don't know who did
Mhm,
it, but
mhm,
so they're out there, and then kids
mhm.
use them, right? They use them as like a promotional tool or whatever. So I think he's just kind of asking your general thoughts on sites like that, whether it's Hockey DB or Elite Prospects or whatever other ones that I'm sure are out there. But for kids, let's say, or for parents, or how scouts use them, or how teams might use them, or whatever.
So I'm answering this.
Yeah, yeah. There you go.
uh, you know,
Yeah,
eh,
yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
This is the kind of stuff that means nothing to me. Um, a piece of paper doesn't really explain what a hockey player looks like unless the goals are the point totals are absolutely crazy. It's like whatever. Like, and who knows how accurate this stuff is, anyways.
right. Yeah.
Like, number one, so in youth hockey, I can tell you right now, um, for sure, if someone has 200 points, let's say 100 goals and 100 assists, they probably have somewhere around 200 points, give or take, because someone sniveled and who knows who got the points right. Like, and
Yeah.
if you got, so that I would say that kid's probably a point getter. If someone's got 15 points, then he's got somewhere between 10 and 15, like, give or take, right? Or 17
Yeah.
or 12 or something like that. So it's like somewhere in the vicinity, because there's no ref in youth hockey that gets all the points correct.
Yep.
Because I mean, there's usually 2 or 3 refs on the ice, not 4, and they don't have the guys upstairs taking stats like accurately. So who knows who even scored the goal half the time?
Yep.
That's the truth. So that's that. But okay, so that's what you're gonna get. So after that, what does it mean? I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. So you had 12 goals, 24 assists. That's great. Like, I know that there are some people that will go and look at some of these sites just to see what in the vicinity, what type of player they have. So, like, meaning if if I live in Ontario and I want to go to BC to play, and there's a junior team from a junior team out west that is, they're going to look, well, let's see what kind of points he has in junior B or midget or something like that. And it's like, oh, he's got 39 points or 78 points. Like, 78 probably looks better. We'll probably take a better chance. Maybe there's something there to him.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it means nothing, because the eye test and playing the game within the game in front of someone is what counts. So do people scout from, and I can't give you an honest or a accurate answer on this. Do people scout from your hockey DBs and stuff? Like, I don't think so. Maybe in Europe, when you're bringing guys over, they look there at your professional and junior totals. That maybe that gives an indication if you can get points. But in general, like, I don't think people are scouting from the hockey DB. So
No.
the information that's on there, in my opinion, is not that important. So
Mhm.
it might be interesting as a player to see, oh, I'm on the internet,
Right.
and I've got points and where I stack up and I'm the top scorer, whatever. That might be something that's interesting to an individual player. But as far as anyone else, I don't think it matters whatsoever.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it's the at best, it's to me, it's just like a crude tool that some people might use in the circumstances that you're talking about, right? Where it's like, yeah, I can check out who you played for and what you're doing, but it doesn't really give me an indication of how you play the game. And the biggest thing to me is it looks like, because I remember when I was a kid in high school and younger, when there's a website or something that you can use to show your points or how many people have viewed your profile or whatever it is, then it's just another one of those like ego being a beauty cool things, right? Where it doesn't actually mean much towards your actual game. And I'm sure somebody can find the exception of where someone was scouted off elite prospects and they ended up playing on some team and did great and whatever. But I'm talking about generally speaking, it's not, there's no scouts that I talk to or that you talk to ever reference, oh, I saw their profile on elite prospects and it said that. Nobody says that. So for kids especially, it just turns into like a little bit of a Hollywood show my
Well,
profile kind
the
of
thing
thing.
the only thing, in my opinion, that if you look up a player, all it shows you is his points, which is, and I know a lot of people think that that's the most important part of hockey, but it's actually not. So that's the part. It's like, okay, you got some points, but no one knows why.
Yeah, and you know what's funny about that? So we were talking about the other day. We were talking about Rick DiPietro. So if anyone doesn't remember him, he went first overall, 2000 or 2001. He's a goalie, and we were talking about him because he's still getting paid on a contract since then, which is crazy. But that's another topic. But I was noticing because we looked at his hockey DB because I was like, or his elite prospects, whichever one it was, and because you can see where he played and whatever, and I wanted to see where he ended up after he stopped playing the NHL. And he played for the U.S. national development team before he got drafted, and his stats weren't like crazy. It's like they were good, but they were very good, but they weren't like, wow, this guy is Connor McDavid who had 200 points when he played for the Marlies in his draft year. It's like it wasn't that. It was just these are good, good stats, and that is what it is. I could find 15 other goalies that had stats like this that played for really good teams, right? So why did he get drafted first overall? It's not because of his stats, man. It's not because of his elite prospects or whatever. It's like when somebody went and watched him and when they played, it was like, oh,
100%.
this guy's the real deal or whatever,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
So that's one of those things that just like the media shit, like we were talking about last week or whatever, it's one of those things you can just get caught up on that doesn't actually mean much.
Yeah.
And the smaller your world is, the more important something like that becomes, right?
Yeah, I'm just all those sites. I mean, this is what I'll always say is people that have these sites, whether it's the hockey DB or it's a scouting report and all that stuff, it's someone's making a little bit of money somewhere, and good for them. It's cool. And for some players, this is, and I'm not being negative, this is the highlight of their life is they get to be on hockey DB and someone or whatever it is, and they can see everyone in the world can see their stats and
Yeah.
look at I'm pretty cool or whatever, and that's cool. Like
Yeah.
kids are into that stuff, right? I mean, there was other people that I know that started sites where if you send them video, here's one, right? You send their videos of your games, and they'll go out and they'll send it out to colleges and stuff for you. It's like same thing, right? It's like what a lot of people are hoping is that someone else will do the work for them, or the reality of like, you know, if scouts or people aren't doing their job properly, that you just need exposure. And you know, everyone's missing the boat, so I got to find these different things to promote how great I am. But the reality is that there are people watching every day, and even in Adam and Pee Wee, right? Yeah, or whatever they call it now, U6, U13, 12, U11, 8, 9, whatever. Everyone talks. Like what happens is everyone talks about the best players, even though you're not getting scouted in U9 or U10. There's talk. Yeah. So people know in general who the best players are. It doesn't need to be on a piece of paper. Yep. And then as you get older, you're scouted. And do people miss? I mean, we got one guy that skates with me right now on the junior team that I've talked to a couple teams about because I think he's a good hockey player. And I asked him, I said, you didn't played in Toronto? And I said, what happened? Like, how come you didn't get drafted? I'm curious. He goes, I don't know. I was kind of told I was going to go in the 4th round, 3rd round, 4th, 5th round, but never got drafted. I said, okay, cool. I'll talk to a couple teams for you. Apparently there's a couple schools that are pretty hot on him right now. But then having said all that, when he's doing stuff with me, he looks really good. But maybe in a game, he's not what he presents himself in practice. Yep. So you can shoot the hell out of a puck. That's good. But do you get those chances in a game? Does the whole game surround, you know, being a hockey player? What are you missing? Mm-hmm. So the scouting part is the part. That's people have to see you live. Like all this other stuff is, you know, I'm very almost negative on this stuff because it just doesn't matter. And my friends that are in the business agree with me 100%. I've got one of my friends that's Scotty Rex. We were just talking the other day, scouts for LA, and he said, oh, I forgot to tell you this. He listens to, he goes, I look forward to listening to the podcast every Sunday.
Really?
Yeah. Scouts for LA. Great guy. And he gives you some really good perspectives on scouting and stuff. It's great. Yeah. I was standing with Glenn Wesley the other night at a game. You don't really know him, eh?
I don't know him. No, I know he played and all that, but
he was my NHL draft year, but he was a late birthday. So he ended up playing 20 years in the NHL, and he's now the player development for St. Louis. So we had a couple connections there. We talked for one full game, and really neat, quietly, like not. I guess just because he wasn't flashy, but he played 1,436 games, I think it
Yeah.
is. That's a lot of hockey. 20
man.
years. Asked him about injuries and stuff, and then just talk to him a little bit about what he sees and all that stuff. Is very interesting, like little things, right? So here's the thing, right? It meant nothing in our conversation, but for me, it was like, this is what scouts see. Okay, so we're watching a game. It was Guelph against, who they play the last game against? North Bay. And he was saying, he just, oh, geez, this guy's he's got to get better handoffs there. That's what he noticed in a game. How many people are watching a game and watching a goalie, defenseman, goalie handoff? Right?
Yep.
So he sees little things like that, and that's just the experience, right? So that's sometimes you'll see. You're never going to get that on a piece of paper that says he got 12 goals and 12 assists.
For sure.
So it's really interesting, man.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say on it, just because we should move on, is you mentioned the word exposure, which I want to stick on for a second because everyone's very worried about they need to get the most exposure possible. And what people need to understand, if you're playing at a AAA or you're playing at the highest level in your area for your age or whatever, you're getting exposure. Like, you don't need to do any more than you're already doing unless you're not good enough. If you're not good enough and you have to go shop yourself out places, that just means you're not good enough. Because so I went to a game on Sunday.
Good enough right now.
Yeah, right now, right? So for the time that you're playing right now, there's people there that are watching always.
Yep.
I was at a minor hockey game on Sunday.
Yep.
Scout, talked to him for 20 minutes watching, and you'd never know. He was a scout. He's about yay tall. He's got a forward's hat on, a puffy coat, eating French fries. You would never know he's a scout that's there to actually, he will be the one responsible for drafting players. He's not the area scout. He's the head guy.
Yeah.
You'd never know.
Oh, he's a GM.
Yeah, right? So you wouldn't even know.
Yeah.
So he's there watching, scouting these kids, and this is a small market, like, minor hockey team where we're not in Toronto, but there's people there, man. And then that guy is going to talk, right? He's going to talk to whoever he talks to, and you're going to get the exposure, right? So that's another element of the elite prospects thing. It's like, you think you need to update your profile picture and all this stuff because this is going to be my selling feature here. People are going to come and look at this, and they might, but it's not
because
it's
of
a
that.
very, very, very small component, if any, of what people even check out when they're coming to look for you.
Yeah.
So,
One of the things that I've heard this several times is this. I think we've talked about this before. Is when people would ask me about, does my son need an agent? Does your son have an agent and all that stuff? And for the most, the year before he was drafted, he did not have an agent. And people were like, "Oh, but are you going to get one?" I'm like, "Yeah, when the time is right." And they said, "Well, yeah, but what about exposure and promotion?" And if you think that an agent's there to promote you, that's not what they're there for, because your promotion is every time you step on the ice, every time you practice. That's what you're promoting. And if you can't promote yourself on the ice and having good games or having good habits, then no matter what an agent or someone says, the eye test is number one, right?
Yep, for sure.
You got to impress people when you play. So you can tell people say, "Oh no, this guy's the greatest," but every time you watch him play, if he's average or he's missing a whole bunch of things, it's like, well, I can't do anything as an agent.
Yeah, exactly.
you know,
you have to play.
You have to be able to play. So the bottom line, it always comes down to you have to be a good player. That's the bottom line.
I know, and that was a funny thing. I was talking with the general manager that was scouting there on the weekend. And every question he was asking me about the players he was watching had to do with, can they play the game? Are they good at hockey? They didn't care about what are their habits away from the rink? He didn't ask me about any of that. All that is secondary. It's first, when I'm watching kids this young, can they play or not? Can they play in our league one day? If they can't, then all the other stuff doesn't matter. They have to be able to play, and then we can worry about the other stuff after that, So, and the other thing that's important to know is that people have all different paths of getting to whatever higher level they are going to get to. It's not just going to come from one place or one thing or someone seeing one thing that you did. It's like there's all different ways that you can take, where someone might see you at a tournament, they might see you at home, they might see a video of you, then whatever, right? And that's what sparks their interest. So you don't need to get caught up in all this stupid extra stuff like setting up your player profile or whatever. Like you can do it if you want to, but if you think it's going to make or break what you as a player, it just won't. It doesn't really matter that much, you know. So I'm good to segue now into that. If you're ready.
Yeah, I'm ready for anything, man.
So this is another my Christine idea. She was saying it'd be interesting if we talked about some players that we like that are in the NHL, and kind of just go through their profile, kind of where they came from, and the reason that previous talk about the elite prospects kind of segues into what we're talking about is because I know you wrote a few players down that you like at each position, and it's interesting to see the track that all of them took, right? All of them obviously are really great players, but all very different paths getting to where they're getting to. So it's just a good little side or background thing to keep in mind when you're going through some of these players that you like is there's not one recipe, like we always say. There's not one way. All of them went different directions and ended up in the same place. They all make different levels of money. They've all played for different lengths of time, different ages, different previous teams or whatever. So I want to go through a little bit of that because it's cool, especially be cool to get your perspective on the different types of players because you have a good selection of different kinds of guys where you can see the different roles and what guys' jobs are and how there's room for all of them and they're all needed.
Yeah.
In the NHL.
Yeah.
It's not just one guy or one type of guy.
Yeah.
Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, that makes total sense.
So I'll leave that with you to kind of take it however you want now.
Okay. Yeah. So when I did this again, it was when the questions are asked to me, I'm like, you know, you can break down every guy, and I don't know every single player in the NHL. And if I was to watch maybe Minnesota, well, for example, I left Marcus Foligno off the list, who I really, really like because that's the type of player I like. He's rough, he's tough, he can put goals, put pucks in the net, he works hard. Like that's a complete player that I like. But I mean, like so this isn't going to be my favorite players as far as like. I don't know, maybe it is.
Yeah.
But I can only take so many
like.
because they're examples that I really, really like. So,
and we can't stay here for 5 hours.
Yeah, we can't stay here for 5 hours. I don't even know if this is interesting. But for me, I like talking about stuff like this because it's just my perspective on why I like certain people. And sometimes I have a bias because I know, like, for example, I'm not going to put Connor McDavid as my favorite centerman because he's actually not.
Yeah,
I think he is really, really fast and really, really skilled, and he does so many things that are incredible. But for the most part, and would you want him on your team? Yeah, well, yes.
Yeah,
you know, he's going to be a top dog, but it's not. That's a hard path to even look and say, oh, okay, that guy's. I'll try to be like Connor McDavid. It's just not Connor McDavid. Nobody. Yeah. So and then it's just not, that's not my favorite player.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's just a heads up.
And guys like that. Of course,
I do have one on here.
Yeah, but I mean, it seems like I feel like we don't need to say it, but we need to say it. Like this isn't a list of who we think are the best players in the NHL. Right. These are just guys we like for certain reasons.
Yeah.
Because Connor McDavid's a good example. It's like he's uninteresting because he's just so good at everything. Yeah. It's like, okay, like you were the best, you were always the best, you were first overall, you got all the points all the time, and now you're making all the big money in the NHL. It's like that's not a fun story to go through. It's just it's a stereotypical best guy story, which some of these other ones that you have are much more interesting. Yeah. Even the one big guy that you have is more interesting.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I agree. So I started off with goalie. Yeah. So because it's the least, I have the least, I'm least qualified to talk about goalies, but I'm just going to say the only reason I could say this is like I picked Vasilevsky from Tampa because he's huge. Yeah. I find him very big, very, very agile. He's really good at second effort, trying to make saves. I like second effort guys. Mm-hmm. So that makes when you're putting in second effort all the time, that simply means that you're competitive and you don't give up and stuff. I feel like he has a presence. Like if you know you're shooting on him, it's like okay, he's probably in your head before you're in his, and just competes, and he's won. So that's what I have. I mean, I don't really know. That's the one that sticks out for me. Just a big, competitive, good, agile, athletic, second effort, competitive.
Oh, he's my age.
Goalie with the presence. Yeah, and so he came from Russia.
Yep. He was Russia, so he was a first rounder in 2012. He was a
first rounder, eh?
19th overall in 2012. So
interesting.
He played
first rounder.
okay, but so what I'm gonna do, like you're gonna talk about what you like to talk about, but what I'm gonna keep plugging to people is I'm gonna keep pointing out where people came from, like kind of a little bit about the path that they took, because it's important for players to see that, and parents too, like that there's not just one track. You know, there's certain tracks that are more likely to land you certain places than others, but that doesn't mean it's the only way. So for a guy like Vasilevsky, don't even know what this minor hockey league was that he played in 2011, 2012. Then he got drafted in 2012 and played 2 years in the KHL before coming to the AHL. And then he worked his way up. So after getting drafted 19th overall, he played 2 years, 2 more years in Russia. So KHL is like the top Russian professional league. And then played 25 games in Syracuse in 2014. And then he moved up to Tampa, where he didn't really play. He wasn't really the starter until
No,
2016.
that's right.
So he it's not like he came in and was like stud from day one. And he came from Russia, which I don't know how often it is you get a goalie from Russia, but anyways.
Flip a
So
coin. He works his ass off, and it, even though he was a first round pick, if you look at the history of it, he's talented, works hard, but then he also took 2 years in the KHL and a year in the minors to marinate to get himself better.
Yeah.
So even though he's like that talented and that big and that good, that's how hard it is to make the NHL, right?
yeah, and even after that, he still wasn't a starter.
He wasn't
for
a starter
another
right
4
away.
years.
It took
right?
a year or
Yeah.
so before he became,
Yeah.
you know, in the playoffs, and he was like, okay, there he is.
Yep.
It's like Shesterkin last year. He was like real good, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So
Okay, there's one.
the next one we went with D.
Mm-hmm.
So this one's kind of obvious, but I really didn't really have a choice. And now still kind of young in the league is Cale Makar, and obviously like he's incredible. His skating, his stick handling, his shooting, his playmaking, his vision, his defense is really good. His offense is really good. Skates elite. His puck skills are elite. He carries the game on his back. Right. He's like people have compared him to Bobby Orr recently, and it's like he's kind of that.
Yeah.
You know, he's not overly physical, but he doesn't have to be, but he gets in there, and just really smart. So he played in the Alberta Junior League. That's what I really like about this. And it's not like a lot of people could say, well, that was a weird path, but not really, because he was going to college anyways. So before he went to college, he couldn't play major junior. So he played in the Alberta Junior League, which is it's not a top tier junior league by any means, but he absolutely dominated that. So he was a fourth overall, I think it was.
Yep, fourth overall,
in the NHL,
2017.
but drafted from there. And then he played a year and a half or 2 years in UMass, Lowell, UMass,
Amherst, yeah.
Amherst, yeah. And then stepped into the playoffs and dominated right away. So
for him, did he commit? Do you know if he committed to school before he started playing junior?
I don't know about before. I think there's a age limit that you can. I don't think you can do it too early anyways.
Yeah, true. Well, he's a 98, so anyways, so he played. He's a cool story though, because that's a weird path for a fourth overall pick. He's out of the Alberta Junior League, fourth overall.
Yeah,
right?
I find it weird because not weird, but I find it interesting because the talent level is off the charts.
Mm-hmm.
Had to be. But
Yeah.
you know, if you see highlights of his Alberta Junior League, like he was a stud, like unbelievable, like 14 or 15 or whatever.
Yeah.
So he's dominating. So somewhere in his mind, I'm sure he had the Western teams.
This is what I was gonna say.
Drafting him or taking a chance. Maybe he'll come anyways. But if you're that good, you probably have a pretty good idea that by 18, 19, you're going to play in the NHL.
Yeah.
Right. Like after you're drafted, you're going to play in the NHL. And he chose to go to college anyways. So interesting.
And I mean, obviously he's not there's not a lot of Cale Makars, but it's interesting to see he probably could have went and played in the Western League, and he didn't.
Yeah.
And he still is one of the best players in the NHL right now. He played in the equivalent of our junior B league here.
It's the same
is
thing.
what it is. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
And then from there gets his Division I scholarship and then goes to NHL from there. So you might this is one of the things that, especially around here, guys get so caught up on their draft and all that stuff, where it's like, I got to play in the OHL, I have to do this, and if they don't, it's just crushing and devastating, and it's just not necessary. Of course, you have to be a good player. That's always the caveat to everything. It's not just, well, fine, I'll just go get a scholarship instead. It's like, because a lot of kids think that too.
Yeah.
But it's not the worst thing ever if you don't play in the OHL or in the CHL somewhere or
Yeah.
whatever. Like, there are other ways. You know, you got guys that get drafted out of the BCHL to go to, like, the Twins last night were talking to me about Penticton is talking to them a little bit for next year.
Yeah.
And one of their guys, 05 on their team, is supposed to be second round this year or whatever in the NHL draft out of the
Yeah.
BCHL. So it's like there's no,
Yeah.
it's not like you have to be in one place or there's
Yeah.
one place to go. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple things with that is like, as we always say, is that you can't hide a good hockey player.
Yeah.
You just can't hide them.
Yep.
People see the good hockey player. And then number two, not, you would think when you're building a business, maybe you think that every move you make is critical to the next move, but that's not true. You can pivot. You're going to make mistakes, or maybe that wasn't your best option. But the bottom line, like in business, if you work and you do certain things, you will have a certain amount of success. And it's the same thing in hockey. So like, not every single move has to be calculated. It's not one move is going to absolutely ruin you.
Right.
Right. So meaning if you had the opportunity to go, the path for most, let's say most kids around here is to go to the OHL or whatever. And if you get there at 16, it's better than 17. Well, not necessarily.
Yeah.
It's all these steps doesn't make a difference. What makes the difference is that you play well wherever you're at and you have good habits, right? Yep. And if you do that and you excel at whatever level you are, that's your best option.
Yeah.
Because honestly, at the end of the day, I'm even looking at the kids I train and my son right now. It's like you think this will be the best path, and it. I'm not saying anything negative about it, but it's like maybe if we waited one more year, maybe that would have been better.
Yep.
Maybe.
Yep.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't hurt.
Right.
And a lot of times it wouldn't, but I don't know. It's a thing. You're not gonna ruin your career by making one bad move.
Yeah.
Or not a bad move, a move that could have been better somewhere else.
And the last thing I want to point out about him is he's 5'11", 187.
Yeah.
So that would be a smaller defenseman.
Yeah, 100%.
So he's a little bit. He's basically my size.
Yeah.
A little bit shorter than me, a little bit less weight than me, and this guy's playing in the mix with guys like.
Oh, the best.
Eric Goodbranson. That's an absolute mammoth human.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like it's another thing that people they get caught up in, like, oh, I'm too small and this kind of stuff, especially as a D. It's like it's not necessarily the case that you have to be huge, right? It's like you just have to have a skill set and have a type of a game that you play that you can excel at, right? There's not one frame that you have to be a defenseman either, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I just want to touch on that too.
Yeah, yeah. The next D that I had was Jacob Trouba.
That's a nice one. I like him.
Yeah,
I don't know a lot about him.
When I say this, it's not like I analyze every little part of his game or anything like that. But when I initially see what he brings, over the last couple of years, he gets known for a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things, he was named captain of the New York Rangers. But what I know is he's big and he's physical. And what you'll see with a guy like that is like you better be aware. He makes you aware that he's on the ice. If not, you're going to get cracked.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I love in a player. It's not just that he's a good defender, which he is. It's not that he's just decent offensively, right? It's he's got that, and then also you better be aware because I'm going to take your head off.
Yep.
And not only he's gonna hit you hard, he's also gonna fight you if you have to, if he has to, or willing to fight you. So that's really good. He pushes. What I would say about him is he pushes the physical limits, right? It's like he can hit, but then he can hammer you. Like I think he hits to hurt or whatever, and he's ready to go. So I like that. Keeps people really honest. Got a fairly good offensive mind in my mind, and he's just good all around.
Yeah. So just to point out his path too. So he played national development team in the U.S. and then he played at Michigan for 1 year, and then he was 9th overall in 2012. So yeah, he's also my age. So he's 6'3", 200. So he's a big body. And what's cool about a guy like this, like here's the thing about, because the size thing, like I just said with Cale Makar, he's a smaller guy. You don't have to get caught up in the size necessarily. But if you are a bigger guy, it's very important that you try to use that as a tool to your advantage, So I was talking to a kid yesterday. So he's U16 right now. And I was watching him on the weekend, and he's pretty raw. He's not a real skilled player. And I've watched him play the last few years. And then when I went and watched him play on Sunday, he was like a different player. Like I'd never seen him play like this before, where he is just hammering guys. And he's a big kid. He's substantially bigger than me. His dad's a big boy. He'll probably be 6'2", 6'3", big kid, and nice kid, just a nice kid. And I'm watching him play, running around like mean, like hitting people hard, and not necessarily caring about anything else, like just running into guys.
It's bringing one thing.
Yeah, and
that's okay.
And this is what I was saying. I was like, if I'm a scout or if I'm a coach or a GM or whatever watching, trying to pick a player out, I'm not saying he's going to be a high draft pick or anything like that, but it's like if you see a little bit to his game that you like, but then he also hammers people, it's like maybe we can do something with this kid. Like maybe he's worth giving a shot. Like he plays a little bit rough and tough. It's a little bit different, but he's using that size that he has as a tool, right? So I was talking to him yesterday. He was here working out, and I was talking to him about it. And he goes, I was like, I've never seen you play like that before. Like what happened? He's like, I don't know. He's like, I'm bigger than everyone. So he's like, I feel like I can just do it. And it makes me feel like I'm strong and that I can have an impact or whatever, without saying it in those terms necessarily. But I was like, freaking right, man. Like, good for you. Like, tap into the tool that you have. You're given this tool. So, you look at a guy like Trouba, and it's like, yeah, he has a little bit of an offensive capability as a defenseman. If you look at his points, like one of his best years, he had 50 points, like eight goals, 42 assists. His last year in Winnipeg, 58 penalty minutes, right? +8. So it's like he's not just trying to be an offensive defenseman. He's like, yeah, I can play a little bit of offense, but because I bring that toughness element to the game and I'm using my size to my advantage, that makes me 10x more valuable to my team because I'm using that tool that I just was blessed to have as 6'3". Yeah. You know what I mean? So
yeah, well, it's the theme that the term that I like to use is they have an impact in the game.
Yeah.
And that's what I always say about guys that are just offensive.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you'll notice there's a theme here with everybody that I have is that they leave a mark on a game, typically every game. And the offensive guys, if they're not scoring, are they making an impact? That's the question. And I'm not saying they don't or they do, but can you leave an impact in different ways? So those are typically the guys that I like.
And so think of the contrast. So contrast Cale Makar to Jacob Trouba. Completely different, both extremely valuable to their team in their own right, So it's like, okay, on my team, would I rather take Cale Makar or Jacob Trouba? It's like, well, if I already have a guy that's pretty skilled as a defenseman, maybe I don't need Cale Makar and I'd rather take Trouba. Vice versa. It's like if I already got Cale Makar on my team or someone like him, maybe I need some rough and tough to play as a partner with Cale Makar or whatever to fill in. He's going to run and gun, so I need somebody that hangs back, something like that, right?
Yeah, for sure.
There's space for both, and that's a totally different kind of player, So
for sure. So the next guy I have is Mackenzie Weegar, and I really like him because number one, I noticed him the first year he came in the league. I guess it was his first year. He was partnered with Aaron Ekblad. So Aaron's obviously a good friend of mine. So I was watching, who is this guy? And he got in a couple fights, had knocked a guy out, I think, and wasn't huge. But I'm thinking, okay, this guy's just maybe meat and potato guy, and he's probably there just to kind of give Aaron a little bit of muscle to play with, and maybe to cover his ass defensively if Aaron gets caught up the ice. Maybe they're letting him freewheel a little bit and let this guy go. Turns out this guy was like really good. He could run a power play, and he's tough, and he's tough as nails, but he's got really pretty good offensive instincts. Obviously, if you can run a power play, tough as nails, and hits, fights. Not the biggest. I think he's 6 feet. Yeah, he's 6 feet, and he moves the puck really well. What I really like about him is that he was a late pick, and he worked his way over the last 4 years or 5 years into a top D. So he signed this year as a 7th round pick from years ago. Played in the Q, so I'm not sure, but yeah. So he played in the Q for Halifax, but he's from Ottawa, so he's an Ontario boy. So if I'm putting two and two together, as a 16, 17-year-old kid in Ontario, he probably wasn't drafted. Maybe he was in the OHL, or he was just totally looked over. So I'm assuming as a 16, 17-year-old kid, he wasn't the best player. Probably had a lot of heart and all that stuff, but he was kind of like nothing to get too excited. Maybe not a biggest defenseman, whatever. That's what I love. Plays over 20 minutes a night typically. Like he was playing a ton of hockey, and he plays both sides of the puck really well. And you can partner him with anybody because he's that good. So I like a guy like that. Like there's a guy that I look at and it's like if it's a rough and tough game, you can put him out there. If it's a skill game, you can put him up there. You got to shut guys down, you can put him out there. If you need to get points or power play points or good offense, you can put him out there. You pull the goal, you can put him out there. I bet you if you had to put him on forward, I bet you he'd be good at forward as well. I really like this guy. He's making 67. I think he's making $6.5-7 million a year now.
Yeah. So he's probably my favorite guy that you picked just because of the path, which is so cool. So he's got another one that's my age. How about that?
Well, you're at your prime hockey.
I know.
You should be 94. Playing right now.
Yeah, seriously. So he was, like you said, he's drafted 7th round, 206 overall in 2013. Okay, so listen to this guy's path. This is cool. So he's from Ottawa. So he played in the CCHL for 2 years. So his first year playing, he only played 5 games in his first season in 2010. This is in the CCHL. So for people that aren't from Ontario, there's the OHL. The next best junior league in Ontario is probably the OJ, right? OJHL, something like that.
Yeah, maybe the CC.
You think so?
Yeah, they'd be.
You think toss-up?
I think it's not that far off.
I think reputation-wise, at least, then the OJ's a little bit better because it's Toronto. Then CCHL and the leagues that start to come down more south after that. So this is like arguably the 3rd best junior league in Ontario. So he played his first year, only got 5 games. Second year, played the year, had less than a point a game as a defenseman, but 50 points, but 61 penalty minutes. So he's already like establishing that I got some offense and I got some rough and tough, right? From there, he went to the Q, like you said, which is an interesting move because he's probably had a Q team reach out to him and just said, hey, we'll give you a tryout. So it probably was something like that because he's past his draft, right? His junior draft year would have been 2010. So he probably got an open tryout or a team that said, hey, come to camp or whatever. So he goes and makes the team, plays 62 games, 44 points, 58 penalty minutes in his first year in the Q. So there's a battle. So plays his 2 years, and then he's in AHL on the coast, then another 2 years in the AHL, and then he comes up to Florida. So 2017, 2018 was his first full season after getting drafted in 2013. So that's a 4-year wait, and he scrapped through lower tier junior league in Ontario and then went to the Q because he maybe wasn't good enough or was overlooked to get a tryout in the OHL for an OHL team to pick him up.
Or maybe he was drafted, but just they were like, see you later.
Or what? Or yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or that, right? So, that's an interesting path. So now you got him flying up through Florida. Now he's with Calgary, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's with Calgary. So now he's like a solidified top tier defenseman. Got his payday.
Huge.
Moving to Calgary.
Yeah. He's making Aaron Ekblad money.
Yeah. Right.
Right now, like Aaron's contract will be up in I think a couple of years.
Yeah.
But he's making Aaron Ekblad money, and Aaron is considered like a top dog in the NHL.
Yeah.
And that's something,
Something, man. And there's a guy that you wouldn't even see him.
Yeah.
Right up until the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a good one. I like that one.
Yeah, I love that one. I think he's a great player, and he's tough.
Yeah, he's tough.
Tough, man.
The Pims, man. It's nice to see the Pims.
Yeah. The last guy I just had to put in there because I like him so much is Victor Hedman. And he's just a super talented guy, 2nd overall from Sweden, big all around, great, can score, can defend, plays huge minutes, runs a power play. Size makes him tough to play against, just that long reach, and he can skate and can shoot a puck. He's an elite passer, not necessarily the most physical guy, but his range is all that stuff allows him to not have to be. But I think the world of Victor Hedman.
Yeah, so for
a presence on the ice that is.
Yeah. So this is the guy where 6'7", 244.
Yeah.
Huge, right?
It's huge.
But this is the defenseman that everybody wants to be. Yeah. Right? Like this is the guy that everyone thinks like if I'm gonna be a good defenseman, I need to be Victor Hedman because he's like huge, the smooth skating, big reach, skilled, all that kind of stuff. And if you can be a Victor Hedman, that's awesome. But you don't have to be. And that's kind of what I want to point out. You're always going to find the Victor Hedman where it's like this guy's just an absolute stud, but you don't have to be Victor Hedman. Like if you can be, that's great, but this guy is like optimal in every way.
Yeah.
Right. Second overall pick, 6'7", 244, plays pretty tough, has skill. Like this guy had 85 points last year as a defenseman.
Nice. He's
Right.
incredible.
Like it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So obviously he's a great player, but he would be like he's a close to a Connor McDavid of defensemen, right? Where it's
Yeah.
just like he's so good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's nice to have the contrast that you can see between a guy like him. So he started off in Sweden, and then went straight to the NHL, straight shot. I think his first year, 2009, so played
Sounds about right.
74 games right off the hop.
Yeah.
Right. So
A lot of guys could work. Well, everybody would work as hard as they possibly can, and you just Victor Hedman is just Victor Hedman.
yeah, that's it. Right?
Just
He's
is
one of
what
those.
it is, man.
Yeah.
So at center, I would take Sidney Crosby hands down. Love the guy. Love every single thing about his game. I love the fact that he's like so competitive. He's so skilled. You'll see him and you'll see him battle and compete. I was just thinking about one of the quotes after an interview. There was like a big battle in Philadelphia and stuff, and they asked him in an interview, and after the game, he goes, "I don't like them. I don't like any of those guys." Like he's so competitive,
Yeah.
and it was like he wasn't even going to try to pretend to be nice,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But anyways, he's so skilled. He's been a star from day one. And what I love about him is he continues to work on his game even though he was a star. So this is one of the things, like, you know, when kids have a chance to work after practice or whatever, it's like one of the best players ever to play the game. Years ago he was felt like his faceoffs weren't good enough, and he spent every day after practice working on faceoffs. Then he became one of the better ones in faceoffs in the league. But he said, "There's a gap I need to fix." So competitive, he needs to be the best at everything. I love watching him battle in corners. I love watching him battle through players. Going to the net, and he'll be taking slashes. He'll be taking hits. He'll be having 2-3 guys hooking him, and his feet are still moving. You love watching him coming out of corners, protecting pucks, making plays, shooting the puck. That backhand that's off the charts good.
That's crazy.
Like all of these things you put together, and it's like it's incredible. And I just love the fact that like the second effort, man.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I like. That's what I find separates so many players is just that will to never give up, and on loose pucks or whatever, it's that second effort going to the net and you're still whacking at it. It's like Brendan Gallagher. It's that second, third effort that makes all the difference in the world. And this is the one of the most extreme talented players ever to play the game. I love it. The other thing I like about this guy is I said that he continues to work on his game, which is great. But the other thing I like is that you don't hear anything about Sidney Crosby.
Yeah.
He's learned to, like, obviously he's got some good parents or people around him that or maybe he's just really smart, but you don't hear any bullshit in the does he have social media?
No,
I don't know.
He doesn't know.
Right, he doesn't have social media. He's not worried about that kind of stuff. He's just strictly focused on doing what he's supposed to do.
Yeah.
And I now listen, I'm positive that he goes out and has a good time just like anybody else, but no one's going to see it, right? He's got whatever his policies are. He goes out there and nobody knows that if he drinks 10 beers, you don't know if he has a girlfriend, a boyfriend, a dog friend, like what, you don't know.
Yeah.
He just, his life is private and he's just focused on his thing. So he can't be a bad example to people, to the kids and stuff like that. He's the best. To me, he's just the best.
Yeah.
If I was to put anyone on the ice, I want Sidney Crosby.
Yeah, I agree. The reason I like, because like I said at the start, you're talking about including a guy like McDavid or whatever on. The reason Crosby's more interesting to me is because he's played now for 15 years, or more actually, where you can look back on his career and how he's developed and how his game has changed.
Yeah.
And he reminds me, I wasn't necessarily old enough to pay attention, but it reminds me of my guy growing up that I liked was Steve Yzerman, how he had that shift from ultra skilled talent to he's a winner and he's a leader, right? Yeah. So he still has all that skill, but now he's a winner and now he's a leader. Yeah. And this is why I will go toe to toe on a conversation with like Crosby over McDavid any day. Yeah. Crosby's the guy because he's a proven winner. It's not just about his personal skill. If we're taking all things considered, not just how fast or how flashy are the points, but does this guy actually fully encompass what it means to be a professional hockey player? And Crosby, hands down, he's like stood the test of time. He's never involved in a scandal ever away from the rink. I don't know one thing about this guy's personal. I don't know what car he drives. I don't know where he lives. I don't know what his house looks like. Maybe you can find some of those details and just watching his game evolve to not just being the guy that goes through everyone and scores,
Yeah.
but like blocking a shot, getting in a fight, winning all his face-offs, his plus minus through the roof, like all these different things that make him just such a great example of what the optimal professional hockey player is, whether from his game
Yeah.
on the ice to his training off the ice to his behavior away from hockey. All of that stuff is just, he couldn't be a better example.
Yeah.
And that's why he's a more interesting person to look at, because he's played. And maybe McDavid in 15 years will be like that, where he has a similar story. Who knows?
For me,
For
this
now,
guy is incredible.
there's no
And
question.
what I love about him is that, like everyone says, he's the hardest working guy in the gym, on the ice, and it's not just words. He's like I said, I think it was Mike Rupp talking about it. Played with him in Pittsburgh. I think it was him saying, Sidney Crosby's the best guy in the world, and he decided that his face-offs needed a lot of work, and he'd spend every practice either before or after doing face-off after face-off after face-off. Like, that's a little detail. Like, if he could have just said, "Well, I'm good enough," but like that's tedious. But that's little details that make him that much better. But I just love that work ethic, man. It's incredible. So any guy that thinks that you're doing more or doing a lot, is you have to look at the best of the best. And this is what's interesting, right? You take someone that is so talented, because like whether people want to believe it or not, he was a phenom coming up as a kid.
Yeah, he was a Gretzky,
scoring ridiculous goals. So his you probably have never seen a player like that in your life. Well, that's the stupid statement. No one's seen a player like that in his life. He could skate, he just had pure skill. So he would have made it on pure skill and had a good career anyways. But to see the effort that he puts in. So if you're a player that is kind of skilled or sort of skilled and you're not doing the work that he's putting in, you don't have a chance. You got the guy with that much skill and talent and doing the work. You have no chance against a guy like that.
Yep.
You can never be that. So like if you're a middle of the pack guy or like a really good prospect or whatever coming up, if you don't have that work ethic, then you just can't even compete in the same area as this guy.
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
It's huge.
Yeah, and that's why I like him as an example. More than just his on the ice play, is like looking what he does everywhere outside of the game. That's where I think you can learn the most from a guy like that, right? Because there's a lot of guys that are super skilled. You look at the Crosby level players, McDavid, Ovechkin, Matthews, whoever you want. They all are so skilled. You can learn a lot from their game, yeah. But this guy, particularly away from his actual performance in the game, there's so much there that you can pick from that other guys don't have, and that's why he's obviously a good one to include on the list.
Yeah. So could I go to next?
Yep.
So wingers, I picked Tom Wilson, one of my favorite players in the NHL. Love him. A lot of people hate him, and I think it's either a love-hate relationship. So that's that. First round in the NHL. He was a second-round pick in the OHL to Plymouth Whalers. Played a couple years in the minors. But here's what I think about Tom Wilson. Big guy. He is big, and he is a problem. That's what I would say. He is a problem. He is a freaking nightmare, and he makes an impact in every single game. So like, and that's a big statement. He is a nightmare, and here's why he's so good. He's obviously physical, and I don't think he just hits to hit. I think he actually doesn't mind hurting people, and that's an issue.
That is an issue.
No, people might say, well, that's not right. That's, he shouldn't try to hurt people. Well, he does. He does. And if you're playing against him, then you have to have that in the back of your mind that he's coming down the railroad tracks. And he might feel like throwing an elbow in your face and ruining your life. Oh, well. But that's the nightmare that he is. But also, he can make plays and he can score goals. I remember there was a game in Toronto. I think it was last year. It was like a classic Tom Wilson. I believe he ran over a couple guys, like bad, got in a fight, kicked the snot out of whoever it was, and then got just like one or two. He got the game winner, I believe, but he got a couple goals that was just like to put that knife right in there and then to twist it. And I think he's from Toronto, but like everyone hated him. But it's like that guy made the biggest impact in the game. And so sometimes you get a power forward that throws some hits, and that's an impact, and that can fight. But rarely do you see a guy that could put 20, 30 goals in year after year. and be able and takes care of his own business. Like he's not just starting shit and waiting for someone else to finish it. He's always finishing. So not fun to play against at all. That guy is not fun to play against at all. That is what you call a nightmare. And how many teams would like Tom Wilson on their team? As
All
much
of
as
them.
everyone says,
Yeah.
you know, he's dirty, whatever. It's just you don't know what you're going to get, right? From as an opposition, you don't know what you're going to get. It might be a clean hit. He might throw a knee out. Who, you know, he might get a little bit. He'll cross that line for sure. His biggest thing that I don't even know if it's a detriment, like because he's always on crossing the line of getting suspended. So, but that's like part of the mystique. That's
This
part
is-
of the thing that makes you go, gee, you don't know where he's going to go.
That's why he's scary, right?
Yeah.
Because they're guys that are tough and play clean, it's one thing. But if there's that little element of it's like Cass, right? It's like this guy's got a screw loose. Like I don't know, this guy might bite me when we're fighting. Like I don't know what he's gonna do, right? So that unpredictability of what he's gonna do, that brings the next tier of fear to whoever he's playing against. And it's not just like a Brad Marchand where he's like cheap and dirty. It's like he plays a little bit dirty, but he's actually tough and he's actually big and plays hard. So it's like he still gets the respect.
He can hurt you.
Yes, where it's like other guys that kind of like the Sean Avery types that just run around and might throw a cheap shot, they don't have the same level of respect because it's like you're not actually tough, you're just cheap, right? So if you get a guy like this who he's 6'4", 220, the guy's a mammoth person. He plays seriously tough and he's a little bit reckless. So it's like you have to watch out for this guy, which that is part of the game. And it comes with its negatives. I'm not saying there's no negative to that. Could cost the team, could get a bad penalty, could be suspended, could really hurt someone. Like all those are not great things. But for the style of play that he has, that's plays right into his role. And then the most important thing to me is that he still plays hockey.
Yeah, big
right?
time.
So he's not your old school, you're good for nothing outside of fighting, right? He actually plays. So this is what we said when we answered that question. Guys are asking us about power forwards, like what are some tips for power forwards? And Tom Wilson's a great example of don't put yourself in the box of you just have to play rough and tough, straight lines and finish your hits. Yes, you have to do that, but if you have an opportunity to do something in the game, playing the game, then do that. And you can see that in his stats. Like he still gets his 20 goals, 20 assists every year. Like he's putting 40, 50 points up for the last however many, 5-6 years.
Yeah. But
with his 100 to 200 PIMs.
His value,
right?
like that's a good player putting up those points, but his value is
right
much more than that. Like impacts every single game.
Yeah.
And the thing is that if you're going like he's injured this year, he got what is it, hip?
Yeah, he's off the roster.
ACL,
yeah.
Whatever. How many every time someone's playing Washington Capitals, they're looking down the lineup, they're just God. There's a night off.
Yeah.
Right.
Seriously,
There's a night
man.
off.
100%.
There's
Absolutely.
a night off from this guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember
presence is gone.
last year when Jack I played in the OHL. It was like
Same
when
thing.
every time he got suspended, you think the other teams weren't going, oh, thank God.
Yeah.
I don't need this. I don't have to deal with
man.
him tonight.
Yeah. Yep.
You know,
Absolutely.
his chirps, his stare, his
Yeah, he
whatever,
might
just
stick
going in the
me.
corner,
Yeah. Oh,
questioning how hard am I going to go in that corner tonight, right? So that's
Absolutely, man.
they get right in your head.
Yeah.
Without
Yeah.
doing a thing. That's how much of an impact they have.
So again, just going to point out the contrast. You go from Crosby to Tom Wilson,
Mhm.
right? So this might be another like interesting way of thinking about it. I've said this before. We've both said this before, but how many Crosbys can you have on your team? One. You can't really have like 3 Crosbys because there's not enough ice for 3 Crosbys. There's not that role can only be filled by 1 or 2 guys. Like if you go on Edmonton, you got McDavid and Draisaitl. It's like I can't really have another one of those guys on our team. 1, because I probably can't afford it, and 2, there's not enough puck touches for all these guys now, right? So these other roles are necessary, you know? So you get a guy like Tom Wilson that can come in, or a guy that plays like Cass or whoever that's that type of player. They bring a different element. They don't need to have the puck all game, you know? So you throw a guy like that on the wing with your better players because they can play in that role. If you're going into a tough game where they're normally on your top players, it's like, okay, I'll put Tom Wilson with my top 2 guys, and we'll see how much you go after my top guy now, right? And so if you're a guy that maybe you're a little bit bigger or you play a little bit more physical, you don't necessarily even have to be bigger, but if you play a little bit more physical, here's a guy that you can try to be. And then you don't have to score 50 goals a year. Like, this is the other thing, right? I remember you were talking to Chris Draper about him kind of changing his role from being an offensive player to a defensive player. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, he said when they were playing the World Juniors, he had to shadow Yager. Like, he was lined up with Jaromir Yager, and his job was to shut him down. And now he didn't have to score all these goals and get all these points. And that's actually, in a way, an easier job, because it's like, if you don't score your 30, 40, 50 goals, you're not going to get traded or cut or sat or whatever. It's like, now you just need to play a hard defensive game, and it's not dependent on you to be the guy that can score the goals. And that's better suited for certain types of players, right? So if you're a Tom Wilson, if he's the guy that you're banking on to get 40 goals, he's not going to do it. But he has that other thing where he can play the rough and tough and open up space for those other guys. And that's like an essential thing you want to have, right?
The thing with a guy like Tom Wilson is he might not have maybe a game where he's touching the puck a whole lot, but he can change the game in an instant with a huge hit, or a huge hit, or a fight, or whatever, and it just changes it, and all that stuff. I wanted to go back one. I forgot centerman. I added Nazem Kadri there.
Sure.
And just I'll be real quick about it. But of all the centermen, I love him. He's nasty, man. He hits like a truck. He's not the biggest guy in the world. I think he's 6 feet tall. Two-way center. He can score. Tough as freaking nails. Hits like a truck. He's an agitator, but he will not back down. He's tough, man, and good at faceoffs, can score goals, can make plays. There's another guy that'll make make an impact every single game. Another guy that will cross the line if he has to. He's been in, got a lot of negative press in Toronto and his first year in Colorado for getting his suspensions. But he's nuts. He's nuts. He's a nightmare to play against, and he will be a problem, and he'll keep you on your toes. He will be a problem for you.
Yeah. So here, I like Kadri too, because he kind of changed his role. I don't know if you remember. You must remember.
Yeah,
but
I remember.
Do you remember when he played when he was playing in the OHL? He was like skill guy.
Yeah.
Like, he was skill guy.
Yeah.
I don't remember. Maybe you do, because I would have been too young. But did he have the rough and tough still? He still had it always.
Yes. He was tough as nails.
Always.
He used to. A lot of guys said that, like, he shocking how hard he hits.
Really? Okay.
Hard hitter.
Okay. Yeah. Well, because he's 6 foot, 185. Like, that's a solid body.
Yeah.
But I wasn't sure if he always had the rough and tough, or if he kind of changed it to be more of a focal point of his game when he got to the NHL to stick around.
Same guy.
So he just always played the same.
Yeah. He had that. Cool. He had that edge to him.
Yeah. That's
so
good.
I really like him a lot, especially as a. Yeah, I'd want that guy on my team every single day.
Yeah, and just to like highlight it again for the guys that are forwards, whether it's Tom, because Kadri's another guy. Like, so if you look at Kadri, 6 foot, 185. He's not Tom Wilson, man. He's not 6'4". He's not 220 or 230 or whatever, right? No. He's would probably be an average size guy in the NHL.
Yeah, very
average.
6
foot. Like,
yeah.
So if the more elements of your game that you can develop, it's just the better off you're going to be. So Nazem Kadri, who's a guy that was so skilled that he probably could have, like, his last year in the OHL, he had 93 points, man. Yeah. Right? But he also had 105 penalty minutes.
Told you it was rough and tough.
Right? So, yeah. So, but the year before, the reason I asked, because the year before, so he had 30 PIMs his first year, 50 his second, 30 his third year. And then his last year, it's like 105.
Yeah.
Right? So, regardless of how he did it, he brought this other aspect to his game where it's like, if he's not being a top point producer, let's say, he has this other thing that he can affect the game with, right? He can go and hammer guys. And so if you're not Crosby, where it's like you're just so good that no matter what, every game you're gonna affect the outcome on the score sheet or offensively, have something else.
Yep.
Have something else. And I think Kadri's probably the best example of that, because
he's great.
He's like a perfect blend of the two, right? Where he gets like, what do you have last year? 87 points? Yeah, 87 points last year, right? Great year with Colorado last year. Had 71 penalty minutes though.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I'll score. He had almost 30 goals, but then I'm going to go and I'm going to lay the body and have an impact physically as well. So now you can play up and down the lineup, right? Now you can play if you need a checking shift or whatever. You can do both of those things, right?
Impacts the game. Yeah. Impacts the game every game. As a winger, one of my favorite players, Alex Killorn. Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa Bay Lightning. Here's a guy that I always enjoyed watching him play since day one. I always found like he's that, that he can play in the top six, and you know he can play in the bottom six. He's responsible defensively, offensively. He contributes, throw the hits, block plays. But what I really like about him, he's it's all the little things. He's using big minutes, but it's the little things. I think we were talking about him in the playoffs. If you just watch, he's out there and like passes are. He's always just disrupting a passes. It's like really a lot of the times it's nothing flashy. It's like the guy's coming out and he just poke checks a puck away and just disrupt plays all day long. Then of course he can make plays. He's a very smart player, can score goals, and he's just solid. Good forechecker, good stick, good off the wall. Just everything they want in a player, but without all the flash. But he still gets his points. Two-way player, and then he's a Harvard guy.
Yeah, that's what I was
Yeah,
gonna say.
he played in Harvard, so he's obviously he's got a brain, and I really like that guy as a hockey player. I want him on my team.
Yeah, and he I'm just looking at their. I'm trying to look up some of their contracts.
He's like a $4 million a year.
Yeah, he's 4.5. Kadri, same thing, 4.5. And then I just want to check Tom Wilson.
I think he's 5.
Is he 5?
Yeah, he's not 25.
Yeah, 5.
Yeah.
So here's another thing, right? Like, so we're talking if we just focus on Killorn, and he's got a cool path because he was a school guy, which is a little bit different, and he played 4 years at school too, so he wasn't like a 2 and out.
Yeah.
Like, so he went out. Where was he? Third round? Yes, he's a third round pick. Yeah. He played all 4 years at school though, then played in the A, and then worked his way up. Same thing. He wasn't a straight shot, top tier guy. But so if you look at the game that Killorn plays, or Kadri or Wilson, they make $4.5 million a year. Now it's not 10 like McDavid, or 8.7 like Crosby or whatever, but you're making $5 million a year without having to have the pressure of being the guy.
Yeah.
Right. That's a pretty nice life, man.
It's amazing.
Because like you take some pressure off yourself a little bit that way, because you can do some other things and you make your $4.5 million a year. Like that's nothing to sneeze at.
Well, well, but this is what I'm saying is that for the kids that are parents, even if you want to watch hockey players and stuff like that, Connor McDavid is not who you really want to watch. You want to be impressed, and you want to look at what he does, but it's like understand that type of game is not going to be you. Pretty much a guarantee. But if you watch a guy like Alex Killorn play, like that's complete. He's playing both ends of the ice. You look at him hunt pucks and finish checks when he needs to, off the wall. Watch all the little things.
Yes.
And you'll pick up a lot of what a good hockey player looks like.
Yeah.
Right? He's not Tom Wilson type, but he's like just that good, solid, intelligent, move up and down the lineup, no problem. And he's going to always make good money. Right? And
I don't think, like, so when you look at guys like Crosby, McDavid, it's like, I know we keep saying them, but I don't know. I don't care how much you practice. Like, I don't care how much work you put in. I don't think you can just practice to be that good.
No.
Right?
No.
I think there's an element of that. That's like some just genetic talent that they just had because they're a little bit faster. They're a little bit more skilled in a certain way. They can just catch the puck a little bit better that they didn't necessarily earn. They just had it. Right?
Yeah, so, I know what you mean. I never want to say that they didn't earn it because you know what I know you're not. I'm not cutting you out.
Yeah, let me rephrase it because you're right. Let me rephrase it. So if
the work was there.
So if I'm 10 years old and Crosby's 10 years old and we do the exact same practice habits, to a T, we live the same day, eat the same food, practice the same amount. Crosby's just going to be better than me. So that's maybe that's a better way to say it.
Yeah, that's a better way to say it.
So he's for the kids. That's an important thing to know because these other guys, like Nazem Kadri or Killorn or whatever, you can practice those. You can get really good at disrupting plays.
Yeah,
you can get really good at winning faceoffs. Yeah. You can get really good at blocking shots. These are things that you can actually practice and get into your game. It's not the thing that is so far out of reach because this is just like a guy that had something that not everyone has. Right? You can practice up to the level of an Alex Killorn or a Nazem Kadri or Tom Wilson. It takes some balls. It takes some grit, and maybe that in its own way is something that these guys just had that other people don't have. Maybe that's it, but it's a lot more realistic of something to accomplish to be really good at faceoffs than it is to be able to score 3 goals a game every game.
Yeah, right? Like another element would be like why is Kadri good at blocking a shot? Like what is the art of that? Yeah. Like if you really think about it, it's like, oh, a guy should block shots. Well, I've watched just a couple games over the weekend and watching one of the players on Charlie's team, including him, getting in shot lanes, but not totally.
Yep.
So pucks get through. Okay, so that's a skill. So that can be a skill that gets worked on, and that's something that'll actually make you money.
Learnable
But
skill.
there's nothing exciting about that. Well, no,
Mhm.
there actually is, but that's not hours and hours and hours working in your backyard. Like it's just learning how to get in shot. Like those are little things, right?
Right.
So
Yeah, and that's what I think is important when you look
yeah,
at those guys. Like,
yeah,
it's a lot more realistic to me to try to be one of those guys
100%.
than it is to try to be a Crosby McDavid.
Yeah,
But
because
everybody shoots for Crosby McDavid, you know?
when I say this, it's not taken lightly. Like anybody can be Alex Killorn
Right.
because like the guy can skate, he can shoot, he can
Absolutely,
stick
yeah.
handle. Like went on the ice with. Well, he's in the NHL. That's all you need to know.
Yeah.
There's a base level of hockey that is off the charts good.
Right.
But to play in the NHL consistently, it's like those other things that make him great.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So two last guys. This one will be a little bit quicker. Valerie Nishkushkin. Like it's even the
What a
hardest thing
name,
to
man.
say. Yeah.
Shkushkin.
And I'm giving him. I like him based on last year's playoffs.
Mhm.
So I'm not giving him like he's one of my favorite players, but based on last year's playoffs, I loved him. First rounder from Russia. He's big, he's powerful, he's got skills, he's got scoring ability. Okay. But here's what I liked about him is from the playoffs last year, it was the way he hunted pucks. If you watch him in the playoffs, if anybody can go back and watch the playoffs of Valerie Nichishka, how do you say his freaking name? He was just relentless on hunting pucks. So that's the part that I liked about him. And he was obviously good off the walls and all those kind of things. He's physical enough, two-way player, created a ton of turnovers with his puck pursuit. That's what I loved about him.
Yeah, that's awesome. He's a $6 million guy. Yeah.
Is he now?
$6 million.
Yeah. Big boy.
Yeah, 8 years.
He had a great playoff.
Yeah.
The last guy I'm going to talk about today would be Nikita Kucherov, and he's just like super skilled. But I don't want to not use him today because I actually love the way this guy plays. This guy is one of the best players in the league. Period. He's so intelligent. He's second round in the NHL. He's an elite shooter. I've used a lot of his clips. Like when I was working with some of my junior NHL guys. There was a shot that I was teaching, and they were like, I don't really shoot like that. And I used Kucherov for an example because he used this type of shot so many times. But he's an elite shooter, elite playmaker, elite skater, elite speed. He looks like he's actually in slow motion sometimes, but he's just so far ahead of the game. And slow motion is actually kind of fast because I think his brain's ahead of things.
Yeah.
Really good deception in his game. Like, he'll be looking over here and the puck goes exactly where it's supposed to go over there. Yeah. And I like this guy, man. Yeah. Really good.
He reminds me of Datsuk, but better. Like he's like Datsuk, but it's that like looks like he's not trying, but he is.
Yeah.
That reminds me textbook Datsuk, where it's like he's got a good stick. He makes good passes. He doesn't even have to be looking. He looks like he's not skating hard, even though he is.
Yeah.
He's a fun guy to watch, man.
Yeah.
He's a very interesting player. Not a lot of guys play like that.
Yeah, I love watching him on the power play. Like, he'll find that seam pass, and you know it's coming. It's like Ovechkin with the one time. I watched a highlight of Ovechkin the other day, and it's so funny, man. They got a power play, and he's standing there with the stick kind of half up and half down, waiting for the pass.
Yeah.
Everybody knows it's going. Then he gets it, and he puts it short side. It's short side. It's almost like, is that the only way you score goals?
Yeah, I know.
It's the exact same goal every time. Yeah. It's incredible. But anyways, Kucherov on the power play, when he's moving the puck around, it's like, is he shooting or passing? You actually know which one's coming, and it's like the perfect pass, perfect shot, whatever. He's incredible. So I just wanted to throw him there because there's almost a theme here. For me, I like guys that make an impact in the game, not just on the highlight reels and on the score sheet. I like guys that make an impact physically or, defensively, like in different ways. But I had to put Kucherov in there because I think very highly of him as a player.
Yeah. So I want you to give a little wrap up, like a take home message for like players, parents, whatever. What you think as a wrap up with all these different guys? Would it be just that, but like the impact thing, like finding a way to make an impact every shift without necessarily it being on the score sheet, or like what's your kind of take home?
It's always my thing. Yeah, it's always my thing because I'll watch some of the, like, I go to so many OHL games now, and I watch guys that they're point guys, and but a lot of the game they're invisible, right? So you get on a power play, you get 3-4 power plays in a game, they get their 2 points. It's like, that's good. You need good power play guys and stuff, but it's like, I didn't see you the rest of the game. Whereas I'll see a kid playing and whether it's through effort, through hits, through driving the nets, whatever, I see impacts made in the game, and they don't have the numbers on the score sheets, and that's to me, you're gonna see those guys move on to the next level sooner than the guys that are just skill guys. Here's the thing, right? I always say this, like, if your team's losing, let's say, why are you losing? Is it because of skill? Yeah, it could be, but I think most often it's because of will. I find if you're an easy team to play against, you lose. I find that and this is as a player, right? If I have to go against someone that's going to actually battle me and make my life miserable, it's a game people like to play, but it's like, okay, enough. So that's my thing, is like, if you can impact a game not just on the score sheet, which is important, like, don't get me wrong, offensive ability is critical. Because like most guys that play in the NHL, they got points in the OHL or whatever. Like you're that good of a player. You might have a 35, 40 goal score from junior, go to the NHL and they're getting 12 or 6 goals, right? So the offensive ability is there, but what else are you bringing to the game? And to me, it's like, I like that physical or that second effort stuff, and hard to play against. If you can find a way to be really, really tough to play against, then you're making an impact in the game without scoring goals. And I think that's, to me, people can always remember that. How am I going to make an impact in the game? How am I going to be a problem for the other team every single night? And I could call you a nightmare, but a nightmare doesn't have to be because you're beating the living snot out of people every night. A nightmare could be just because of your relentless defense D-zone effort, or your relentless forechecks. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So that's what I would say, is like, affect the game in a different way.
Awesome, man. That's a great way to close it up. So we'll see you guys next week.